Anger is the one emotion you've been taught to fear, to control, to suppress, to apologize for. But what if your anger isn't the problem? What if it's the most powerful force inside you and nobody ever taught you how to use it? You know the feeling. Something crosses a line. Maybe it's small. Maybe it builds over months. Maybe it happens in a single moment when someone says the wrong thing or breaks the wrong promise or treats you like you don't matter. And something inside you ignites. And then one of two things happens. Either it comes out wrong, too loud, too fast, too much. You say something you regret. You damage something you didn't mean to damage. And afterward, the shame is worse than whatever caused the anger in the first place. Or you push it down. You smile when you shouldn't. You say it's fine when it isn't. You swallow it and swallow it and swallow it until it stops feeling like rage and starts feeling like fog, like a low, grey heaviness you could carry everywhere and can't quite name. Either way, you lose. Either the anger controls you, or you bury it and it controls you quietly. And nobody ever told you there was a third option, that the anger was never the problem, that what you've been doing with it was the problem, and that the same fire that has been burning you could be building you. Here is the thing the ancient teachers understood that we have almost completely forgotten. Anger is not destruction. Anger is directionless power. That's it. That's the whole secret. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It is not a poison to be expelled or a weakness to be hidden. It is energy. Raw, enormous, undirected energy. And energy doesn't care what you build with it. The same electricity that burns a house down powers an entire city. The same force that makes anger destructive, its intensity, its capacity to override fear, its refusal to accept what is unacceptable. That is exactly what makes it, when directed, one of the most transformative forces a human being can access. You were not taught to direct it. You were taught to fear it. That ends tonight. Think about every person who ever changed something that mattered. Frederick Douglass, who taught himself to read in secret and then spent his life dismantling the institution that tried to make him property. Every word he ever wrote was powered by something. It wasn't patience. Marie Curie denied entry to universities because of her gender, who worked in a leaking shed in the cold until she discovered 2 elements and won 2 Nobel Prizes. That kind of sustained effort doesn't come from serenity. Every boundary ever drawn, every injustice ever named, every system ever dismantled and rebuilt into something more worthy of human beings. Not one of them was built from peace alone. They were built from anger that found its direction. The fire didn't destroy those people. It refined them. And it can refine you. There are 3 stages to this, not philosophy, not ancient terms you'll forget in an hour. 3 moves, in sequence, that change everything. Stage 1. The fire. The first move is the one nobody tells you to make. Feel it, not perform it, not express it, not react from it. Feel it. When anger arises, and you will know when it does because the body announces it before the mind has formed a single word about it. The heat in the chest, the tightening in the jaw, the sudden sharpening of everything. Stop. Do not reach for the phone. Do not start the conversation. Do not draft the message. Sit with the fire. Breathe into it. Not to calm it down, not to make it manageable, to make contact with it, to feel exactly where it lives in the body and how large it actually is and what it actually feels like when you stop running from it. Most people never do this. They either react before the feeling has fully arrived, so they're operating from a half-formed version of the emotion, which is always more dangerous than the whole thing. Or they suppress it so quickly that they never learn what it contains, and anger always contains something. That's stage 2. Stage 2, the clarity. Once you are in the fire, once you have felt it without acting from it, ask a single question. What is this protecting? Not why am I angry? That question leads to a story. It leads to the loop of justification and blame and rehearsing what you should have said. What is this protecting? Because anger is always, underneath it, a guardian. It arises at the boundary of something that matters to you, something that has been violated or threatened or dismissed or disrespected. The anger at being betrayed is protecting your need for loyalty. The anger at being silenced is protecting your need to be heard. The anger at watching injustice is protecting your sense of what human beings owe each other. You cannot find the direction of the anger until you find what it is standing in front of. So sit in the fire long enough to ask the question and wait for the answer. It will come not as a thought, as a recognition, something that feels less like discovery and more like finally seeing what was already there. This matters to me. That is why this hurts. That is why it burns. And now you have something the anger alone could never give you. Clarity. Stage 3, the direction. This is where the alchemy happens. You have the fire, you have the clarity. Now the question becomes, what does this build? Not what does this destroy, not who does this punish, not how do you make sure they understand what they did. What does this build? The boundary you have been too afraid to draw. Draw it now. Not from reaction, from clarity. Calmly, directly, with the full weight of the fire behind it. Boundaries set from anger that has been processed are not aggressive. They are precise. They carry a quality that people feel before they've heard the words. This is not negotiable. This is not anger. This is truth. The work you have been too cautious to attempt, begin it now. The thing that has been making you angry about the state of something, your field, your community, your own life, that anger is information. It is pointing directly at the gap between what is and what should be, and you are aware of that gap because some part of you knows what should be. The anger is not the obstacle to the work, it is the fuel for it. The conversation you have been avoiding, have it now. Not the conversation of reaction, the conversation of someone who has sat with the fire long enough to know what they actually need to say. These conversations, when they come from this place, are different. They land differently. They change things that years of avoidance could not. This is the direction. This is what anger becomes when it has been felt fully, understood clearly, and aimed deliberately. Not destruction, purpose. There's a reason the alchemists used fire as their central symbol. Not because fire destroys, because fire transforms. Iron becomes steel in fire. Clay becomes ceramic. Raw material becomes something that could not exist without the heat. The anger you have been carrying, the rage you've been managing and suppressing and apologizing for, it is not evidence that you are broken. It is the heat. And the question the alchemists asked was never, how do we extinguish the fire? It was always, what are we going to make with it? So here is what I want you to do, not eventually. The next time it happens, the next time you feel it rise, the heat, the tightening, the ignition, don't react, don't suppress. Sit with it. Feel where it is in your body. Feel its size and its temperature and its edges. And then ask the one question that changes everything. What is this protecting? And when you know the answer, aim. The goal is not to eliminate anger. The goal is to become someone who knows how to use it, because the people who have changed the world, the ones who drew the lines and built the things and refused to accept what everyone else had agreed to tolerate, they were not calm. They were directed. There is a difference between a fire that burns everything it touches and a fire that is entirely focused on forging a single thing. Both are the same fire. One destroys, one creates. The only difference is the hand that holds it. You have been afraid of the fire inside you for long enough. It is time to learn what it can build. But learning what it can build requires understanding something first. Why the fire became so dangerous in the first place, because you were not born afraid of your anger. Watch a child, a real child, unguarded and unshaped by years of instruction about what is appropriate. When something is taken from them, they rage fully and completely. They don't calculate. They don't manage. They feel the injustice in every cell of their body, and they express it without apology. And then, usually within minutes, it is gone, completely, because the emotion completed its cycle, because the child didn't interrupt it. The energy that was summoned moved through the body and discharged, and the child returned to baseline, unburdened, ready for whatever comes next. And then the world intervened. Stop crying, calm down, you're being too sensitive. That's not something to get angry about. Control yourself. Be the bigger person. Don't let them see they got to you. Message after message, year after year, from every direction, the family, the school, the culture, all converging on a single instruction. The fire is dangerous. The fire is shameful. The fire makes you difficult to love. Put it out, and you learned. Because children always learn what they need to learn to survive the environment. Therein, you learn to suppress the ignition, to smile over the heat, to become, as the years accumulated, very, very good at not appearing angry. The problem is that nothing was actually put out. The fire didn't disappear when you learned to hide it. It went underground. An underground fire does not behave like fire in the open. In the open, fire burns and then it is done. Underground, it smoulders. It moves through the substrate invisibly. It shows up in places that have no obvious connection to the original source. It emerges as something that doesn't look like anger at all, as depression, as chronic exhaustion, as the sudden, disproportionate fury at something small because the pressure finally found a crack. The researchers have a name for this effect: dysregulation. The inability to feel anger within its natural range, to feel it, process it, discharge it, and return to baseline, because the regulatory system that was supposed to develop through years of practice was never allowed to develop, because the practice was never permitted, because every time the fire arose and needed to be met, it was told to go away instead. And so you never learned to work with it. You only learned to fear it. And what you fear, you cannot direct. What you cannot direct will eventually direct you. This is the pattern underneath the pattern. The person who explodes at small things is not reacting to small things. They are reacting to the accumulation, the years of swallowed fire, the decades of it's fine and I'm not angry and this isn't worth the confrontation, and then something minor, a tone of voice, a dismissal, something that on its own would be entirely manageable, tips the weight that has been building for years, and the release is wildly disproportionate to the trigger because the trigger was never the source. And then comes the shame, which teaches the lesson again. See, this is why you can't let yourself feel this. This is why the fire is dangerous. This is why you have to keep it contained. And the next cycle of suppression begins. This is not a character flaw. This is a learned pattern, and learned patterns can be unlearned, but only if you understand what you are actually dealing with. Not a problem to be managed, a capacity to be developed. Because here is what nobody tells you anger actually is. Anger is the guardian of your values. It is the internal alarm that fires when something you care about has been violated, when a line has been crossed that matters to you, when the world is behaving in a way that conflicts with what you understand to be right and true and worthy of protection. You cannot have strong values without the capacity for strong anger. They are the same system. The depth of your anger is the map of what you love. Think about the things that have made you most angry in your life, not the surface irritations, the traffic, the small frustrations, the daily minor abrasions, the real anger, the deep kind, the kind that stays. What was it protecting? Almost certainly someone you love, something you built, a truth you refused to abandon, a version of yourself you would not betray, a standard you held for how human beings deserve to be treated. The anger was not the problem. The anger was the proof. Proof that you have things inside you that matter enough to defend. Values that are not negotiable. A self that will not be endlessly diminished without response. The person with no anger is not enlightened. They are either numb or defeated. The capacity for righteous fire is not something to be spiritually transcended. It is something to be spiritually educated. And this is what the education actually looks like, not in theory, in practice, in the specific recurring situations of your actual life. There is someone who has been taking from you without acknowledgement. Maybe it is obvious. Maybe it is so subtle that you have spent months wondering if you are imagining it. But the anger keeps arising, which means the boundary keeps being crossed, which means something real is happening, even if you cannot yet name it precisely. The old response is one of two things: explosion, which feels like power for approximately 30 seconds and then costs you more than you gained, or continued silence, which feels like maturity, but is actually the ongoing sacrifice of something essential. The third option, the one the fire was always trying to point you toward, is the conversation that comes from stage 2. Not from the raw fire, from the clarity beneath it. You sit with the anger long enough to find what it is protecting. And then you speak from that. Not you always do this. That is the fire speaking before the clarity arrives. But this matters to me, and this is what I need. That is the fire that has been refined into direction. This conversation is harder in preparation and easier in execution than either of the other two options, because it is true. And truth, spoken from a place of genuine clarity rather than reactive heat, has a quality that people feel in their bodies before they have processed the words. It lands. It changes things. Not always immediately, not always in the way you hoped, but it changes things. Because you are no longer asking from fear or demanding from rage. You are stating from clarity. And clarity is the most powerful relational force there is. There is one more thing I need to tell you about the anger you are carrying that has nowhere to go, the anger at things that cannot be changed, the loss that should not have happened, the years that cannot be reclaimed. The person who is no longer here to hear what you need to say. The version of your life that did not materialize, the injustice that was real and was never acknowledged and probably never will be. This anger has no external direction. There is no conversation to have, no boundary to draw, no action that will resolve it. And this is the kind that people carry the longest, the heaviest, the kind that becomes, over years, something they organize their entire emotional life around without quite realizing it, a permanent low-frequency hum of unresolved burning that colors everything, their capacity for joy, their ability to trust, their willingness to try again. The direction for this anger is not outward, it is through. You feel it, all of it, without the story this time, and not the rehearsal of what happened or who was responsible or what should have been different, just the raw energy in the body where it actually lives. And you breathe through it, not to dissolve it, not to make peace with what is genuinely not okay, not to arrive at some performed acceptance that papers over a real wound, but to let the energy complete its cycle, to let the fire burn through rather than burn in place, because grief and anger are not opposites. They are the same energy moving in different directions. Anger moves outward toward change. Grief moves inward toward acceptance. And some situations call not for the outward movement, but for the passage through, the long, slow, unglamorous process of feeling the full weight of something that hurt until the hurt has moved through enough that you are no longer organized entirely around protecting yourself from feeling it. This is not weakness. This is the hardest form of the work. And on the other side of it, not immediately, not on any schedule you can predict or control, something opens. Not indifference, not the absence of feeling, space, the space that the held anger was occupying, the bandwidth that the suppressed fire was consuming, the energy that was tied up in the permanent vigilance of someone who has been carrying unresolved burning for years. That energy comes back to you, and you can build with it. So here finally is the picture. The anger you expressed too quickly, that is the fire before the clarity. Feel it longer before you move. The anger you suppress and swallow, that is the fire being denied its cycle. Feel it fully instead of managing it. The anger that has no external target, that is the fire that needs to move through rather than outward. Feel it all the way to the other side. 3 kinds of anger, 3 versions of the same medicine. The fire in every form is pointing at something real. Your job is not to extinguish it. Your job is to become the kind of person who can hold fire without being consumed by it, who can feel the full intensity of the ignition without losing the ability to direct it. Who knows the difference between the moment to speak and the moment to sit? Who has learned, through practice rather than suppression, to work with the heat rather than against it? This is not a personality type. It is a skill, and like every skill, it is built through repetition, through the daily, unglamorous practice of meeting the fire when it arises instead of immediately reacting or immediately shutting down, through asking the question again and again, what is this protecting? Until the question becomes automatic, until the clarity is available faster, until the direction becomes instinct rather than effort. The alchemists said the fire is not the enemy of the gold. The fire is how gold is made. The ore comes out of the earth full of impurities, full of everything that is not gold. And the fire burns away what is not essential until what remains is the pure thing, the real thing. The thing that was always there inside the raw material, waiting for enough heat to reveal it. You have been carrying heat for years. Some of it arrived as injustice, some of it as loss, some of it as the accumulated weight of 1,000 moments when you were smaller than you should have been allowed to be, and all of it, every degree of it, is material, not punishment, not evidence against you, material. The question the fire has always been asking you is not why is this happening to me? The question is, what are you going to make with this? Because the fire doesn't make that choice. You do. You always have. The only difference now is that you know it. The only difference now is that you have the 3 moves. Feel it. Find what it protects. Aim it. And then build the thing that only someone who has been through the fire can build. Because the people who never feel the heat, they can make things, but they cannot make steel. That requires the fire. That requires you, exactly as you are. Every degree of heat, every unresolved burning, every year of carrying what should have been put down sooner. All of it. Material. The goal was never to be someone who doesn't feel this. The goal is to become someone who knows exactly what to do with it. You already have the fire. Now you have the direction. Go build something.